According to Battle for the Net, a website in favor of keeping net neutrality as it is ahead of the upcoming FCC vote that is expected to repeal net neutrality. There have been seven 750,000 people who have called into Congress over net neutrality. And while one might read that number and say, oh, well, that sounds very impressive and that's good, you have to remember what we're dealing with in terms of statistics. I'm a person who lives in California where there are 39 million people, which should tell you that's less than, 1% of those just living in that single state or my state. So while someone might see that hundreds of thousands of people have called in over this, that's still nowhere as much as we need for there to actually be a drive toward getting the idea of, yes, a majority of people do not like this. And let me say hello to Envoy and Beach and Corwin and answer their inquiries. How am I? I've been better. I was thinking we're finally getting some people to regularly tune into this, and while that may be the case, the issue I've had since beginning to speak about this regularly is that you can't get people in mass. Even if you're a major aficionado on this subject, such as TYT, such as Secular Talk, any type of group that has a large number of people backing them already just isn't doing it. So let me read Envoy's comment. A decent size in comparison to the whole of the U.S. Not many. That's my point. Where you're getting what I'm trying to convey here. And Corwin asked the film with the sun shining in the. Hey, I don't mean to turn into a figure of frustration, but there's always the option of having an audio version of this where you just turn the whatever you're watching on a phone or computer and just hear me. So that's always something you can do to counteract the sun. I mean, I live in an area where there is sun. I sit in an area where there is sunlight. I don't know why that would be the main topic of concern after how are you, but you can have your own opinion. I'm bugged by it, and I do find it quite interesting that there are a number of outlets that are reporting protests which are scheduled to be held after this vote. And I've always had kind of a mixed thing about protests in the modern era, where part of me thinks they're effective in conveying the idea of there's massive amounts of people who are not okay with this. The other part is that when most of these protests occur, typically in the process of those going on, they'll have people that give speeches, and these addresses never seem to give some type of solution to the problem. So, for example, during that Women's March thing the day after Trump's inauguration, one would think the solution to just having the problem of him being, which that felt premature because he's only been in office for 1 day, but one would think if that had been done at a later point, maybe a month or two into him being in office, they could say, hey, we're going to counteract him doing this by doing this. We're going to make him repealing DACA not matter by getting people who are legal to be registered legally as citizens. Things that are practical in an era where you're not in control of the rules, which has been the case for the last year. And if one were to say, oh, we're going to have, this net neutrality protest, I would want whoever speaks to give solutions on how to deal with this, to say more than just call your Congress members. If they tell you can't access this, don't pay for it. Make them get zero gains from doing this. Except the lesson of noting that whenever you mess with people's um, rights after a certain amount of years of them having been used to those, you can expect a backlash that will result in you not receiving any financial gain. And Envoy says, sadly, a lot of YouTubers I know are taking a laid back stance, just saying whatever happens, happens. I kind of have that same approach in the sense that if it does occur, we'll still deal with it, but I'm not entirely aware of what's going. I'm thinking it's more so going to just be them repealing it, but I don't have some game plan on how to combat it afterward. You'll try to come on here and see me just make some recording where I'm dazed and confused, or have the little chickens flying above my head, in that cartoony sense of the of appearance. So I'm bothered by it. Too small numbers for it to be this close away. I've seen more people talk about the Senate election, the special one in Alabama, than the actual repeal of a majority of Americans' access to the internet. At least placing restrictions on it with this vote. So I'll have something else out about it later on. I'm bugged by it. It makes no sense for there to be 83% of Americans using the internet, and less than what 2% of them actually calling Congress. But they'll find out when they turn on their computers post either the 12th or the 14th, and just realize the ramifications of not placing an emphasis on this. And that's not meant to spite them. It's more directed at the idea of you can't allow things that matter to you to be taken without a level of seriousness when they are threatened.